Hi, my name is Niklas Hallin and this is Neckbolt Dev Blog. Today I'm gonna try and explain the scope and size of this whole game. Let's look at the map. This is the map as it's currently looking inside the game, though I might work some more on this. For instance, it's starting to look like I might have to add a sort of snowy winter area up here, and I'm also considering redrawing the whole thing in a different style. So the game starts here, and you begin by moving up this here peninsula, which serves as a little tutorial where the 4 major game actions are introduced. Those are, by the way, talking/interacting, headbutting, box pushing, and your trunk abilities. After the tutorial you get to Wind Hill, which is the first town and which I have already talked about in a previous episode. This is where you learn about the water ability incidentally, and after that you leave the village and head into the woods. Hedgehog Forest is the first real forest area of the game. I guess the tutorial path is also technically a forest area, but it only has like 3 puzzles, and those are not puzzles so much as individual puzzle elements boiled down to their most basic functionality. That said, it turns out Hedgehog Forest consists mainly of a tunnel. After you puzzle your way through each room, you arrive in Nightingale City, which is the biggest city in the game and the capital of the human kingdom. Nightingale City has lots of stuff in it. I started working on it really early so that I'll have it available inside the project and can add more stuff to it all the way up to release day. I'm not gonna talk more about it now, but you'll explore the city a bit, talk to some important people, get introduced to some royalty, and then you leave through the North Gate and enter Trollmost Forest. This is the second forest area, and the clever ones among you will have figured out by now that these are basically the gameplay path between the cities. This forest has more of a Scandinavian feel to it, which is primarily because I myself am from Sweden, but also because pine trees are remarkably simple to model in 3D as compared to leaf trees. After going through Trollmost Forest, you get to the Sundergarden, also known as the Sacred Cemetery, also known as City of the Dead, which is the area of the game that I'm working on right now, and it is probably the area that I say is the most interesting one. But then I have a thing for philosophy from beyond the grave, as you know if you played my previous game Belladonna on Steam. In the Sundergarden you will find the entrance to the game's first dungeon, which I have not started working on yet, but it will be a kind of spooky crypt or tomb. And I promise the game will never become scary. The ghosts you meet are either nice and friendly or rather goofy. After having completed the dungeon, you can exit the City of the Dead into a new forest, which at this point does not have a name yet, but it will have a yellowy autumn theme. This forest path leads to Freehaven, where the robotic Mechani lives. As I said, all this is parts of the game that I haven't started working on yet, but I do have a little bit of concept art for Freehaven. I think it can be a pretty charming town. The second dungeon is in Freehaven, and it has an underwater factory kind of theme, I guess a little bit like Bioshock or that treasure world from Shovel Knight. After this you might make a visit to the snow area I mentioned, which is still in the planning stage, and then it's off back to Nightingale City again for the third and final dungeon of the game, which happens to be an actual dungeon. So that's the outline of the whole game. 4 cities all in all, 3 dungeons, and forests to connect it all. As you can see, I have gotten quite a bit into the development. 3 out of 4 cities are, if not finished, at least fully playable, and I think I'll be done with the first dungeon before this spring is over. That said, I am really not comfortable with giving time estimations of my project. As an indie developer, I know fully well that any predictions I make are likely to be way off, and if I start talking too much about release dates and milestones, people might start taking them as promises. That's all for today's episode, but stay tuned for next week when I'll be back. This whole project is funded via Patreon, and if you want to help out, it would be super cool if you could head over there and subscribe. Your contribution is what makes this game possible, and you can also subscribe on YouTube, and you can follow me on Twitter for quick updates. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.